the city's Department of Correction is stepping down. His retirement comes amid allegations Ponte misused his city vehicle.
Heads continue to roll at the city's housing authority following the recent lead paint testing scandal, but not the head. NYCHA General Manager Michael Kelly handed in his resignation.
Our team has learned that a new boss is about to take charge of the agency that's supposed to protect New York City's children.
As the next commissioner at ACS, Hansel will replace Gladys Carrion, who 2 months ago submitted her resignation after her agency dropped too many balls and children died.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of The Morning Stretch with yours truly, Tony Herbert. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's a happy Sunday as always. And actually I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine. He's actually been in the street with me during the time frame that I started a lot of my community advocacy work. I reached out to this brother, and ever since then, he's become like a brother to me. I want to welcome the likes of Mr. Clark Pena.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you.
Clark, I know what you do, but I want my audience to know. Tell us a little bit about what you're involved with now and the things that you're doing.
Well, this is the problem. What don't I do? Just like you, Tony. You know, we've been involved in so many things out on the street, and we just become more of a professional at it.
Right.
We're out there. My name is obviously Clark Pena. I host a TV program in Manhattan called The Advocates Corner,
Right.
which is liked by many. I'm surprised.
It's a good show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Just like this one. I am right now a consultant for the Law Enforcement Employees Benevolent Association. I deal very closely with the City Council. I deal very closely with other elected officials, and my passion is community activism. I love responding to help others. Just recently, we visited with Governor Cuomo. We visited Taft Houses. We accompanied him there, and we did the whole tour. So that was good to be part of and see the change that takes place after things like that.
Well, I mean, oftentimes it takes for us to make the noise to get them involved. Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about that as well. But let's touch upon first LEBA. Explain to me what LEBA is.
Well, the Law Enforcement Employees Benevolent Association, LEBA, represents under the leadership of Kenneth Winder, who's a retired state trooper. He represents the DOT inspectors, Department of Transportation inspectors, sanitation enforcement officers, and he represents DP police officers, the ones that protect our drinking water, our reservoirs. And very quickly, because it's a long story, Kenny reached out to me, and we sat down at a coffee shop in the Bronx, and he says, Clark, I'm starting a labor union, and I want to take over a couple of units that are not happy with their current representation. I looked at him in a coffee shop, and I said, are you crazy? Come on, Kenny, let's be for real here. And he says, Clark, I'm doing it. So I said, oh, let's give it a shot. Now, looking back then to where we are now, it's amazing. He got it done. We represent these other units.
Now, how many actual agencies are within there?
Well, right now it's 3 separate agencies. As far as membership, 900.
Okay.
900. We have other groups that are reaching out to us, email, Facebook, whatever way they're reaching out to us, say, hey, you guys are doing a great job.
Well, they want representation.
They want representation.
Now, the other piece that I know that you were involved actively with some type of community affairs outreach for the city council, or something to that effect. Speak to that for me.
Absolutely. Dr. Ari Gregg, who is someone that's very active, just like we are, started what they call the Community Affairs Bureau of the New York City Council.
Okay. Yeah, that's new, because I worked in the city council, and I never heard of it.
Well, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Dr. Gregg said, look, everyone has a city council arm, a police department.
You mean a community affairs arm?
Community affairs
arm. Oh, okay, because if they had a city council arm, we'd be in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But he says there should be an arm dealing with community affairs as a liaison, if you will, between the elected official from that district and the community. So they could know what's going on firsthand. Sometimes,
well,
it
makes me curious, because there's so much going on in our communities, and to have a community affairs bureau, that would mean that they were putting how many folks are actually involved in that particular structure? How many people are actually engaged?
Well, right now, as far as the whole hierarchy, we're talking about 23.
And is that broken up through the city?
Through the city.
Through the city. Okay.
There's one borough that has not really been put together as tight as all the other boroughs, which is Queens.
Okay.
And we're working on that.
So paint this picture. Community affairs. These folks, their responsibility is to go out and do what?
Well, their responsibility, I'll give you a perfect example. There was a correction officer that was assaulted Right. Not too long ago, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
No one knew about it until we got the word. Ari Gregg, who happens to be a chaplain, responded to the hospital, and he put the word out. All the elected officials, once they saw this, said, what's going on? No one told us. But there's no one to tell them. This is the arm that would take care of that.
Right, so that leads me to believe that there should be some elected officials that need to be told about all the other issues that's going on in the city. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and they've gotten a little silent. Why is that? Why, since there is a need for this Community Affairs Bureau, is that because people believe that the city council is not doing what they're supposed to do, or they just need that extra air?
I think they need that extra air. There's also a sense of complacency with the city council right now. When Melissa Margarita was a former speaker, she was, for lack of a better word, very pushy and really pushed things to go certain ways. Now there's a sense of a little bit more relaxed. The new speaker, Corey Johnson, and he has a different approach.
Yeah, I like Corey. I like Corey. Corey does bring a little more energy to what's happening. When I was in the city council, Peter Vallone was the council leader, and I was working for then council member Priscilla Wooten, may she rest in peace. So again, this particular city council is different from that era. I don't, and maybe this is my own personal opinion about it, but I don't get the sense that they're as proactive as they should be. I think that they're progressive, but they're so far to the left and what have you that they're looking at issues and bringing in things from other cities and what have you and pounding them on New Yorkers. And New York is trying to catch up to what they're trying to do, but I think that they're too far ahead with the leadership that they're putting out there, and it's confusing people.
Absolutely. Well, the speakership is what it is. That he leads the rest of the council members, 51 council members. So I guess he sets the pace at this point in time. It looks like he has his feelers. He's doing a great job. I saw him very involved with the NYCHA issue. Didn't pick sides, which he shouldn't. And he's doing good work as far as that's concerned. Great dancer, great singer. But we'll see what else comes up. I think he's doing a great job.
There's a myriad of other stuff I want to talk to, but we have some other guests I want to bring in to join you and I in the conversation. So we'll be back after this, and we'll come back with some more guests and make this a little bit more exciting.
I would like to say it's my pleasure to be here today, but it's not.
It was really awful. It was really devastating.
An account similar to the one Governor Cuomo delivered last week.
It is disgusting. It's uninhabitable. If New Yorkers saw the conditions that were in NYCHA units, they would all be disgusted.
Every branch of government has neglected public housing in this city for far too long.
Do you include the mayor's office on that list?
I include everybody in this.
Welcome back to the Morning Stretch. I am actually joined by another guest, but before I jump to her, I want to ask you, Clark. Sure. Again, we discussed the issue with regards to the city council and how they've been quiet, but now all of a sudden they're running around to all the churches. What's your thought about that?
Timing.
It's a political season.
It's a political season, and where you have churches, when you have senior centers, you have votes.
But I guess, they haven't been in these churches before. Why all of a sudden the great appearances?
Why not now?
I'm gonna hold you on that one. Sure. We're now joined by my other guest, and she is here, awesome lady out of the Bronx, Ms. Pamela Stewart Martinez, community education advocate. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm great. I know we've been pushing, trying to get you in here, and we've been talking a lot about stuff. I ask you the same question. What's your thoughts about our politicians who all of a sudden just show up? Like, I'll give you an example, Cynthia Nixon. All of a sudden now, she knows where African American people live and winds up in Brownsville. Your thoughts?
Okay, see, here's where we're going to disagree. I actually like Cynthia Nixon.
Okay.
I happen to know that she's been very active when it comes to education, especially in our communities. She's been fighting. She's been working with different education organizations. So I think it's a natural transition for her to want to be more active and visit us where they feel that, she feels that we are. So I don't have a problem with her showing up in our neighborhoods, not at all. Churches, I feel a little funny about churches, only because you have people who you will not see them until election time in a church. And then all of a sudden they show up at everybody's church. And they're demanding or pretending to be concerned about everyone's needs, and then when the election season is over, you won't see them again. You won't see them at the senior centers, you won't see them at the churches.
But wait, how is she any different if that's the case?
Well, okay, the church thing I personally have an issue with, just me personally, the church thing. If you're not really a member, or you're not part of that particular group, I mean, showing up at a service and then spending maybe 10 minutes there just so that you can speak and then dipping out, I think it's disrespectful.
But Cynthia did the same thing not too long ago. She's visited some churches. She was in for a hot minute with an entourage and runs right out.
Okay, so that I do have a problem with, but I don't have a problem with her coming to our communities. Because she has been fighting for all children in New York City for a while regarding education. But I would feel that way with any politician.
Well, I take this position because, quite frankly, I just don't want the audience to be confused with the thought process on what goes into politicking, what goes into a candidate running for office. I think it disingenuous to a large degree, and you and I both know because we both ran. So we understand the dynamics of what has to be done. Yes, you have to do the due diligence. I mean, not the kissing the baby thing, but at the end of the day, you still have to go out to make yourself visible, quote unquote, to the electorate. However, my problem is if you're not on the ground, and I gotta say this, and this is just my position, if you're not on the ground every day, and all of a sudden because you're running for office, now you're showing up, that's a problem for me. You know what I mean? That's where my challenge comes in because I don't feel confident that you really believe what you're saying. Now to go to Brownsville, a place you've never been, and whatnot, and I've done a lot of work in Brownsville myself personally, so I know what's going on out there, and you show out there, but you go and hand select a number of people that personally you feel will actually give you the applause that you want so you look good to the media. I have a concern about that. Why shouldn't we be concerned about politicians that politic like that?
Here's where I have to say we're putting her
Wait,
under...
feel free to jump in because, you know...
No, this is good.
We're putting her under a microscope.
No, we're putting her as a politician.
Yeah, okay, her as a politician.
Or wannabe politician.
Well, she is hopefully. See, I don't believe in politicians.
Is this a woman thing?
Yeah, I don't believe in politicians.
Okay.
I believe in public servants. We have a lot of politicians in office right now. I'm hoping that she's not going to be a politician. I'm hoping that she's going to be a public servant. So I guess you already know who I'm voting for. Okay, let's start there. Okay. So
I didn't say I wasn't voting for her. I just said I'm concerned. I don't know who I'm voting for yet.
Okay, but what I do have an issue with the church thing, only because I grew up in the AME church. And for me, in my opinion, it's kind of funky to show up and disrespectful to the church to show up for 10 minutes and then leave. That's the way I grew up in my church.
I get it. And oftentimes, if it's not prearranged, I mean, I want to show the audience something. We've got politicians that dance around. I want them to take a look at this.
Okay.
And I want to say, to put a coda on all this, I'm sorry, guys. You can try to put things in a certain perspective, but I think it's not right to miss all the things that we just delineated, and then determine that the only thing that matters was whether a form was filled out a certain way.
Clearly in that clip, you just saw our politicians doing the 1-2 step. The governor, Cynthia Nixon, and a host of others, or what have you. Clark, let me ask this quick question. Has the governor, the city council, and this mayor failed us?
Well, let's look at everything they've done and everything they have not done. There's failure in some point, but they have delivered in others.
Okay.
I think the governor, and I just toured.
Well, I'll give you. You say they've done so, but you got NYCHA. Let's talk about the mayor first.
Okay.
You have NYCHA. You have the failure of the homeless. You have the failure of the issues around NYCHA, culminating with that. Let's go back to that real quick. And then you also had the issue with regards to education, which I know Pam can speak to a lot of.
Oh yeah, I have a lot to say about that.
So what are some of the concerns there?
Okay, so my issue with the mayor is that I don't believe mayoral control actually supports every single community. And the reason that I feel that is because if you look at the schools that have been struggling and closing, they have been primarily in my communities with the majority of the people who are black and brown. They're closing the schools. They're shuffling schools together, they're merging them. There's all kinds of confusion that's happening with education. And we're not seeing that in District 2.
Right.
Although I have a lot of people that I know and love in District 2, it's not happening there. It's happening in District 5. It's happening in 7. So there is something that's not happening in our communities, and I feel it's because when you have one central location that dictates what happens in all the communities within the city, and these communities have diverse needs, something is going wrong.
And that's an aspect of failure that I'm talking about. But also, let's talk to you. What are we talking about when we talk about the law enforcement component?
Okay.
And then you have the issue with Rikers Island, the Department of Corrections, all of that stupidity that's out there where these guards are just trying to do their job, but we see it as a land grab, which we had a discussion about this last week.
Absolutely.
Your thoughts on that side, and where does the city council fit in on that side?
Well, personally, I think closing Rikers Island and taking these different locations in our communities is a big mistake.
Okay.
I think let's fix what we have. Let's Blue Lives Matter all the way. Let's give the backup to these correction officers that they need, and let's just fix what's there. Let's not try to destroy what's there and then put these different locations where you're going to have felons and misdemeanors and all these folks just in your neighborhood. I don't think that's the right solution, if you want to call it a solution.
And I have to agree with you on that. I was speaking to you earlier. I grew up across the street from a park. When you talk to children and when they talk, or adults, and you talk about your childhood, how many people want to say, I grew up across the street from a jail?
Jails, and also speak to the issue, they want to spend $10 billion to build new jails, but at the end of the day, we're talking about issues with housing. Where do people live? I mean, even in your own district, and even the Bronx, you're about to be seriously gentrified.
Oh my goodness. See, and here's the scary part about it is, people want to talk about, affordable housing. When you have so many people who need assistance, housing assistance, we have people who have Section 8 vouchers, who when they go and they look for apartments, they're being told, we don't accept Section 8 here, which is against the law. In New York City, you're not supposed to be able to discriminate against someone based off of income, and that's what that is, but it's not enforced. We have people who are in our state assembly and our state senate who are not fighting the good fight and creating legislation that would support that and housing in New York. They claim that they're doing it in Albany, and they're not doing it.
But they're all being quiet. I mean, across the board. What about housing for low-income people? I mean, I know people that are in the middle class can't even afford to live here.
Okay, let's also go into home ownership opportunities. Why is it that we don't have real affordable home ownership opportunities? I'm sorry, I live in the Bronx. The district that I live in, the median income, $28,000. Okay, why shouldn't someone in my community be able to afford to buy a home in the community that they grew up in?
Pena, I ask you the same question. In Harlem, you guys have really been targeted.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the resolutions to this?
I think that you have to call the elected officials to task. There are your community boards, your local electeds. That's your voice. You have to call them to task, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to say, let's stop this, let's reevaluate, and bring in the community.
Well, community boards are appointed by city council members and the borough presidents. So we have to hold all of them accountable. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, they have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. They work for the people.
Right.
Well, just a minute. I'm going to disagree with you to some extent about the community board members, because much like the PEP, which is the Panel on Education Policy, they work at the pleasure of the people who appoint them. So if you disagree with the person that appoints you, if you vote in a way that they don't necessarily agree with you, then all of a sudden you're asked to step down, or you're not allowed to come back and keep that seat. So when we hold someone's feet to the fire, I mean, granted, if I probably would never be selected to be on the community board for obvious reasons.
First and foremost, community board appointments are basically political anyway, so let's be very clear about that. And most of the information don't always get to the community the way it's supposed to. I'm going to come back with some more, because I want to talk about violence, which is what we've been out on the forefront on for a lot of, and we'll be right back after this.
Evil, motivated assassinations.
Governor Andrew Cuomo dedicated a new bill in the young men's names. The measure provides key funding.
It is a total of about $20 million.
But the governor's own documents indicate it's really $18.5 million. Most of the funding tries to help stop people from joining gangs in the first place through community programs.
Please help me to welcome my next guest, Mr. Ron Kelly. Ron joins us as a political talk show host of a Blog Talk radio program, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
So, Clark, I hate to keep beating you guys up, but I want to get your input. Is de Blasio coming out a little bit Trumpian, if you want to call it that, with regards to how he's presenting himself and, blaming the media, saying that fake news and all that stuff? I think it was reported in the Daily News, something similar to that. What's your thought?
Tony, you got to say something. Sometimes when your back is against the wall, you got to say something. And if that's the way he comes out, it is what it is. And if that's his approach to it, I would question it. Number one, number two, he has people around him that should tell him.
But I mean, look at his management style, and is that acceptable?
It's not acceptable.
All right, when you talk about his management style, we're talking about it, and as I see it here on my computer, it says ACS is an issue for him. Nights is an issue for him. We know about the heat and the lead and the lying and all that stuff to the federal government. Rikers Island with the Department of Corrections and how they're being mistreated by him. Homeless Services, and even Raven Stevens. I want you to take a look at this.
New tonight, a deputy director for Mayor de Blasio arrested on weapons charges and suspended without pay. Police say 42-year-old Reagan Stevens, who works in the Office of Criminal Justice, was inside of a car in Jamaica, Queens last night. Police found a loaded 9mm gun in that car. Police were responding to the area after a shot spotter device detected 5 shots. 2 men were in the car with Stevens. No one claimed the gun, so all 3 were arrested.
So clearly here we see an executive under the de Blasio administration, quite frankly, probably being privileged, as I was talking to the panel while this clip was running, that she was actually released on her own recognizance from jail, and the 2 individuals that she was with were arrested and held on bail. Now, my question is, why wasn't she charged with what they were charged with? Because nobody owned up to saying that was their gun. It confuses the heck out of me. Trumpian. It goes back to that. So what's your thought process, my brother?
Well, I think no one should have privilege. She had a responsibility to do her job, and her job as part of the criminal justice system. And, that one should be looked at once again.
NYCHA, ACS, all of these organizations, I mean, the failure of the people that he selected to work for him. How do we deal with that, from the standpoint of saying that we have confidence that this guy is a really good manager, if in fact he can't even select the right people to run the city with?
Right, and let us also understand that he has a selection team, which I know a few people that work there, and they seem to really have dropped the ball once again, and this is nothing new to us.
What do you think about that?
Well, see, I feel like he wants to run the city like a dictatorship. I think I mentioned that. He wants people to work with him who will do as he says.
Right.
He's not interested in hearing any other reasonable discussions about what could happen. It's his way or it's no way, and if you don't follow suit, then you can't be a part of his team. So his team is yes men. That's what he's going to have.
I want to talk about the issue of gun violence, but I also want to add this. I thought that the leadership he had in ACS was appropriate until they did not support her in her efforts. And that was why he had to create such a transition and bring in somebody else. But she was taking heat and they didn't defend her, and she was doing a damn good job. I would say that much. Now, speaking of gun violence, which is an issue I definitely want to talk about because I've been very much on top of that, along with Clark, myself, and a host of others. Matter of fact, Clark, a lot of those people ain't around anymore.
I know.
And they're getting those city paychecks. I want to bring in somebody that's not getting a city paycheck and what have you. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about your program. And I'm also happy to celebrate the fact that you'll be joining the Advocates Without Borders as our New Jersey outreach coordinator. So
absolutely.
I look forward to that. But talk about the experiences that you guys are having with regards to gun and gang violence in New Jersey.
Well, Tony, it's not much more different than any place else in America. Right. New Jersey has its problems just like Chicago and LA and St. Louis and all the other places where gun violence takes place. And what has happened in the black community, I believe, is that guns have become the power piece in the black community.
Oh, somebody's throwing up their hands anymore. Just pull a gun.
Yeah, whoever has a gun has the power, in the black community. That's what our system in the black community is melted down to, where guns are number one. If you have a gun, you have power. And this is what has happened to us. Our values have been screwed up.
I mean, it's
because
big time.
we're looking at, because we used to say knowledge is power.
Uh-huh.
I mean, knowledge in the black community is not necessarily power anymore. Now it's guns. And not only that, but I was talking on my radio show last week about the Willie Lynch syndrome and how the Willie Lynch syndrome is still prevalent in the black community, where Willie Lynch's idea was to just pit us against each other. You don't have to control the people, you don't have to watch them, just pit them against each other, and you can control them that way. And the Willie Lynch syndrome is still permeating the black community up to today, and this is why, one of the reasons why we have so much gun violence and black folks are killing each other.
You speak of it on a broader range. And also in the Bronx. I mean, we've had a number of experiences in the Bronx with regards to gun violence, and your thoughts on that?
My thought is that school used to be your safety place.
Right.
And when we started closing schools and after-school programs and programs that children could go to and participate and keep themselves from being a part of anything that would be counterproductive, we removed all of that.
Well, and here's the crazy part. The governor just allocated $16 million in Long Island to fight against gun and gang violence, quote unquote, but it's running rampant in the 5 boroughs. What do we say to that?
Well, what I say to that is that that's probably related to the $10.5 billion that he's putting into building new jails.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you don't invest that much money into something unless you're expecting some sort of revenue in return. So my question is, what are you expecting in return?
Right. Again, you're spending all this money when here it is, you can take 10 points on my $1 billion, I think it's getting up to 11, and you can open up new mental health facilities. You can open up, quote unquote, some more schools. You can open up more programs and outreach so we can get our young people off the street. Your thoughts on that?
Anti-violence programs, you could fund those. There need to be more anti-violence programs out there to deal hand-in-hand with the police department.
But yet they're still trying to find money for the summer youth programs, or some employment programs. What do we say to that?
You know, I'm going to tell you something you're going to find very interesting. So I believe New York City, $32 billion for education, right? Okay, so I'm at a meeting with the chancellor last night, and basically he said for all of our schools to actually have the fair student funding that they're supposed to get, 100% of it, it costs $750 million. So why can't we have that? Why isn't all of our schools fully funded? The new chancellor's trying to figure out, why doesn't that work? Why aren't all schools funded? There is something that they do with the numbers, and it starts at the top with the mayor, because he is the person who made himself in charge of everything.
I find that quite interesting. Ron, Mayor Ras Baraka just got control of the school system in Newark, and we praised him on that. For the most part, because of the visionary that he's actually providing a lot of opportunities. There has been some outreach and whatnot. We're looking to work very closely with him on that, with one of our organizations, USTEP. He's bringing that program into Newark, which follows a little bit of the design that we put together under the One Family, One Community initiative. So I say to you, you have Irvington, you have Patterson. What should they be doing different?
Well, you know, first things first, they haven't had control of the schools in a long time.
Exactly.
You know, long time. And I think that, you know, charity, like I said, charity starts at home.
Right.
And I think that some of the schools should start outreaching or reaching out to the families at home and find out what some of the issues are at home. You have drug abuse, you have violence inside the home. There's a lot of things going on. Some of the kids come to school hungry. And I think that we need to look back on some of these, pay more attention to what's going on with these kids, and then reach out to their families, not wait for them to come to school. Have someone go in the house, find out what's going on. I don't mean like doing it like an investigative type of thing, or doing it undercover police, but reaching out to folks and finding out what their issues are, because they need to start, you know, we need to start taking a look at these kids and seeing what their experiences are at home, because what happens at home, they take them to the school.
Lightning fast, real quick, what do we do to fix some of the problems?
First of all, have people that are more involved. You know, we've been doing it for a long time. We've been in the street shooting at one location. If it was in Manhattan, you come to Manhattan. If it was in Brooklyn, I would go to Brooklyn.
Right.
And people really have to just come together and address these issues. We can sit down and criticize everybody, but at the end of the day, there has to be an end game, and the end game, let's work together.
What do we do?
People need to come out and vote for people that suit their best interest, instead of voting for people that are looking at the interest of themselves.
In Jersey, what do we do?
Good luck with that.
I think you spoke to it. I think you hit it right on the head, though, and I look forward to engaging a lot of what's happening in New Jersey. It's a new place for us to actually venture out into to do some advocacy work. I know there's some great advocates out there. I'd love to partner with them and see what we can work out.
Yeah, there's some good positive things going on in New Jersey. People tend to think, people from other states tend to think that New Jersey is the garden state, you know. And there's a lot of concrete in New Jersey, and there's a lot of hard things that are going on in New Jersey. So there are some things, some good things that happen in the schools. Like you said, Newark has the schools back, Patterson has the schools back. Now, the other thing, Tony, is that if you take the schools back, you take the taxes back. You know, so.
Well, something's got to balance out somewhere, right?
So you get the schools back, but then later on you're like, man, we got Patterson's budget, for example, was $500 million.
And Patterson has a lot of problems.
And Patterson has a lot of problems. So the good news is we got the schools back. The bad news is now we got some of those taxes.
We're going to bring you back to talk some more about the Jersey component, because I know we're going to be doing some more work out there. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate you, Pam, and all the great work you're doing. Now, you have something coming up. You're working on something. No, you're a candidate.
Yes, I am a candidate.
What are you running for?
I'm running for state senate in the 32nd district of the Bronx.
Okay. We're going to look on that.
Thank you.
Clark, we have work to do. We have advocates who are on the payroll, and it seems like it's only a few of us that can actually get out in the street here in the 5 boroughs to make things happen. They're all on the payroll, man. We don't have no more bullhorns.
Tony, I'm following your leadership. See you on the street.
He wants me to. Clark Pena, Pamela Stewart, Ron Kelly, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be right back with my final rant, and stay tuned for some more of The Morning Stretch. Well, there you have it. Points of views from various grassroots organizers who are on the ground, just like yours truly. But when it's all said and done, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that we have to play a role. And the best way to do that, we have to vote. If you don't vote, you get exactly what we were talking about. Nothing in return, and individuals who basically want to push you aside for that dollar. Let's not let that be the case. At the end of the day, it's about you, your family, and how we live in this society today. Be a part of the process. Get out and vote. That's what this is all about.
Oh,